welcome back to my channel. So you're a little bit farther away from me today. I have a new filming setup. I don't know if this is how it's gonna look in every video. I also think I need a mic because I think I'm a little bit too far away from the camera, but we'll figure all that business out a little later. So this is a completely new setup. If you didn't watch my welcome back video, you won't know that I moved. So I actually did move. This is my new apartment. I'm sitting on my couch right now. There's my kitchen is behind me. In my welcome back video, I kind of talked about how I went to Savannah, Georgia. I went just me and my cousin. We've actually been to Savannah before, so it wasn't like new territory for us, but we kind of just wanted to explore it a little more. We both kind of love the South and like the history that's in the South, that kind of a thing. I love spooky things, obviously. Savannah is one of the most haunted cities in the country. Like, if you've never been there, like, and you're a fan of spooky things, history, warm weather, good food, like, just, you need to go. We kind of went to Savannah in October because one, we had time off, and two, because we wanted to go around Halloween time because like the spookiness was real. Fall is my favorite season. I'm just like very into it. We did a couple of like ghost hunting tours. We did a couple of like a hearse tour. We did a lot of really cool things while we were there. We did some tours of like old historic houses. Ate a lot of really good food. But I did have some weirder experiences. I'm very much a believer of paranormal things, a believer of ghosts, all that business, but I've never experienced one in real life. You know what I mean? I'm also kind of skeptical, but some spooky things did happen, so I'll kind of go through those with you. There's just things I can't really explain that were just really weird. I don't know if it's because we went there specifically looking for these things, we made ourselves more open to like the paranormal, I don't know, or it's just in our heads. But I'll tell you what happens regardless. So the first story I have, so we went to this house called the Sorrel house. If you're familiar with the history of Savannah, Savannah ghost stories, you'll kind of know which house this is. It's been on Ghost Hunters, it's been on Ghost Adventures, it's been on Taps, it's been on like all of those ghost investigation shows. They do their own paranormal investigation type things like late at night on certain nights, I think. We actually didn't get a spot on one of those tours we wanted to do one, but we didn't get a spot. Anyway, we'd already been to this house, so we kind of knew like the backstory, but we decided to just take the tour again. We had like a free period during one of our afternoons, so we were like, why don't we just go to this house, take a tour? So we actually wanted to take a paranormal tour, but the only tour available was like a history tour. I think it was history and architecture, so like how the house was built, how it's lasted all these years, that kind of a situation. So we get on the tour. We were already like, all right, we've already been here, we already know like the ghost stories, so there's nothing new this lady can tell us about like the paranormal stuff, so it's fine. We'll just take the architecture tour. I really just wanted to get pictures of the inside of the house. The lady right off the bat was like, listen, I can't tell you anything paranormal about this tour. If you want a paranormal tour, this is not the tour for you. I'm sorry, like I'm not into that kind of thing. I don't believe in it, all that business. So we were like, okay, whatever. We've already been to this house. We've already heard the ghost stories, so like she's not going to tell us anything new anyway. We might as well learn about the history. We start on the tour, start taking pictures around the place. Nothing really creepy has happened. So if you want to know the history, I'll put like a good website that has like all of the hauntings in Savannah, like the most famous ones. And you can read about all of them there if you're interested. I'll put a link below. Essentially, the story of this house was that, I don't know if it was pre-Civil War era, that around that time period, I think it was Mr. Sorrel. I forget exactly how the story goes, but I think he had like married a woman, and then I forget if he got divorced from her or if she passed away. He ended up marrying her little sister, who supposedly was like crazy, super anxious all the time, super like possessive of him and like worried and that kind of thing all the time. He was like this wealthy, obviously rich white guy, blah blah blah. Essentially, they had a bunch of slaves. They had this one main slave, I think her name was Molly, I want to say. I could be wrong, but I'll just call her Molly anyway. So Molly was like head of the household basically, so she took care of everyone and everything in the house. She knew where everyone was at all times. She got the biggest room in like the slave quarters. She had her own room, which was like unheard of. There's like multiple theories of what exactly had happened. Essentially, Mrs. Sorrel had jumped out of a third-story window or was pushed, fell to her death, and then a couple days later they found Molly hung in her room in the carriage house. So that is the basis of the ghost stories that go on. Supposedly, Mrs. Sorrel was looking for Molly. It was like the day of like this big party where everything had to be done perfectly, I guess. And Mrs. Sorrel was looking for Molly because she knew that Molly would know where Mr. Sorrel was because he had to be, I don't know, ready for this party or event or whatever. So she went to go look for Molly, ended up finding Molly and Mr. Sorrel together, and she either jumped to her death by her own doing or was pushed because she saw what she had seen. Who knows? And then the next couple of days, we don't know if Mr. Sorrel had killed Molly or if Molly had killed herself because of what had happened, or if someone else killed her. Nobody really knows. It's all a big mystery, and it's one of the mysteries of the house, and that's essentially the basis of the paranormal activity there, supposedly. We're taking the tour. We're on the second floor or whatever. It was like the main area where they have like the two parlors, like the men's parlor and the women's parlor, you know what I mean? So we're standing in the women's parlor, and our tour guide's talking about like wooden beams and whatnot, and it's like some of the history of like the artifacts found in the house. Now, none of the artifacts were actually from the owners of the house. They're all just like era specific pieces, so they're all historically accurate to the time, but they didn't belong in the house. They had like this rag doll sitting on a chair in the women's parlor on a desk by the corner next to some windows. I'll insert a picture if I still have it. But this like rag doll had no face, no eyes. It was just really creepy looking. So one of the girls on the tour asked the tour guide, do you know anything at all about this doll? Like, why does it have no eyes? Why is it so creepy looking? And she was like, well, I don't know anything about paranormal, like I said, but supposedly one of the Sorrel daughters likes to move the doll around places. So we were all like, okay, weird. Me and my cousin are, of course, standing in that corner right next to the doll. She keeps talking about like the beams and whatnot, and we're all turned to face her away from the window. Essentially, I hear like this little kid's voice, perfectly clear, and it was like, blah, 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 play with me. Like I heard the end of the sentence. I turned around immediately. I gasped. I literally look around at everyone's faces, and I was like, oh my God, what was that? I look out the windows. I look down to the story below where people were like lining up to take the next tour. I look over there. There are no kids anywhere. So I'm like, what the frick? Like, it was perfectly clear, a little girl's voice. It was so weird. And then one of the girls on the other side of the room looks at my face and goes, I heard it too. And I was just like, oh my God, so I'm not crazy. Like, I heard something. I don't know if it was like being piped into the house because it's like a known spooky place. I don't know. I'll leave that to you guys. But it was very creepy, and I was creeped out the whole rest of the tour. So the next creepy story I have has to do with one of the nighttime tours we took. It started at midnight essentially, and you would go till like 1 or 2 a.m. and it was just like a walking tour of all the creepy places. It kind of took you by like graveyards and like by some of the town squares. You got a little bit of a history lesson plus like some of the ghost stories that have happened there. Essentially, the reason why Savannah is so haunted is because it's literally a city built upon its dead. So the entire city was built on, I forget exactly what, but some kind of a mass grave or a graveyard of some sort. Basically, the entire city is built like that. Like, you can tell in the streets, like in some of the cobblestones, one of the tour guides was explaining, or the brick streets, they're raised in some areas and flat in others, and those, according to them, is how many, like, the bodies that are piled under these streets. Very weird. So yeah, essentially everywhere is haunted because of that. So we were on this tour, walking by the graveyards. I'm taking loads of pictures because I'm like, I want something to show up. Like, I was looking for something. So I brought my big DSLR, obviously the one I'm filming on. Never had any issues with it. It's perfect. It's always worked perfectly for me. Walking along, taking pictures. We stop in this square. I think there's like 4 original squares in Savannah. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Savannah is built on squares, and in every square there's a church, and in every square, like, the houses are kind of built around it, and there's a garden in the middle. I forget why it was built like that. It was something about like sustainability, and then there's a church on every square, so you do no wrong essentially, and you have a green space. Very, very cool. It's a beautiful city. Like, if you need to go and just walk around in it because it's gorgeous. If you've ever seen Forrest Gump, that's actually filmed in the part where he's sitting on the bench and he talks about like life is a box of chocolates or whatever. That's actually filmed on one of the squares in Savannah. So you can just see how freaking pretty it is. So essentially there were 4 main squares built in Savannah. I forget if it was like the 1700s or the early 1800s when these squares were built. And in one of them, there was a courthouse and the jail or prison, whatever. So essentially the jail was built in such a way that like the people who would be in jail would look at the courthouse and subsequently look at this tree that happens to be in front of the courthouse and watch people get hung and watch people get sentenced on trials and just kind of think about what they've done and the consequences of their actions. And this tree, it's known as like the hanging tree. Supposedly, Spanish moss doesn't grow on one side of this tree because it will not grow where innocent blood was shed. Now, Spanish moss is everywhere in Savannah, like everywhere, but miraculously, not on this tree. If you go on the website I show you, it talks about the square, I think, and talks about this famous murder that kind of took place there involving like an Irish immigrant woman and her husband. I'll let you read it because it's too long of a story and I'll probably get a bunch of things wrong. And it kind of mentions this tree. Our tour guide was kind of explaining all of the creepy things that happen associated with this tree. People have come out bruised, bitten, scratch marks just from standing in the vicinity of the tree or underneath it. On our tour, we weren't even allowed to go near the tree. I mean, unless you wanted to, but our tour guide was like, I'm not going near there. He showed us some pictures of some bruises and stuff on his arms that just miraculously appeared when he was standing under there. So he like absolutely refused. Now, me looking for something paranormal, I went up to the tree, tried to take pictures of it. My DSLR would not take the damn picture. So I'm standing there like an idiot for minutes, not knowing the stories because our tour guide was telling them to the group as I'm standing there trying to take pictures of this demonic tree, and my camera's not working. Like, you know when you go to press the shutter button, it kind of focuses for like a quarter of a second and then takes the picture? It wouldn't even focus on anything. Like, it wouldn't even show like the little focusing square so you could manual focus it. But then I would turn my DSLR to the center of the square and I would snap a picture of the monument that's in the center of the square perfectly. And then I turn back to the tree, nothing. Turn back to the monument, snap. Turn back to the tree, nothing. Turn a little bit to the side here, snap. Turn back to the tree, nothing. It was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. So I go back to the group and I talk to my tour guide and I'm like, hey, I don't know what this means, but I know like paranormal is known to like mess with electronics and whatnot, but my camera will not take a picture of this tree. And he was like, that's never happened to anyone that I know of under this tree, whatever. And everybody in the group, because it's an adults only tour, I think you have to be 18 to even take the tour. All the guys are like, yeah, bullshit. Okay, I don't believe you. Your camera's probably just not working. There was this one guy that was like the worst. And I was like, all right, dude, you want to try? So I give him my DSLR and he walks up to the tree, tries to take a picture, nothing. Turns to the side a little, picture. Turns to the front, nothing. He looked at me, he gave me this look and he was like, holy shit, you're right, dude. And I'm like, I know. And then I was able to snap pictures of it on my phone, actually. Nothing weird showed up there. Sometimes I guess you can see like this white flash, like there's something in the trees or under the trees. I got nothing in my pictures. So yeah, that's probably the creepiest thing that's ever happened to me. It's probably the 2 creepiest things that have ever happened to me. And when I got home, I still have the pictures of the tree on my phone, and I just got really weird vibes all the time in my apartment. Like, I just got really bad, weird, negative energy kind of vibes. I deleted the pictures on my phone because I was like, I don't know if they're tied to that, but I know that that tree has negative energy. So I deleted it and nothing. And our tour guide at the end of our tour also brought sage and saged us all just in case, because God fucking forbid. And I was like, bless you, sir. Yeah, I'd like to know what you think. If you want more paranormal kind of stories, because I'm super into them. I have no other experiences, just those 2, but I can kind of talk about my favorite ghost stories and whatnot. Yeah, I'm really into that. So if you guys are too, let me know down below. Let me know what you thought of my stories. If you can debunk anything, if you've been to Savannah, what your favorite haunted places in Savannah are, because it's literally one of my favorite places in the whole country. Let me know down below if you have any questions, comments, concerns. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay spooky.